Hello everyone, back to today's first video. Going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's first video. So this will take us to around the 27th of January. And we'll be able to extend out a bit beyond that with the extended GFS and ECMWF because they run to around 2 weeks, at least the ECM ensembles and the extended GFS model with its ensembles too. So I'm going to take us into the start of February. Weather's getting colder. It's colder out there today. If you've not been outside yet, it's pretty chilly northerly wind, say Least has a real bite to it, and I think we will see weather becoming colder in the days ahead. In fact, we may be setting up a prolonged spell of cold or possibly very cold weather. I'm going to touch with everything that's going on very shortly. We're going to update Snow Watch tonight. Been a very, very quiet season for Snow Watch so far this year. We've barely done any. But I think the Snow Watch page is going to start livening up from around now onwards, and your first Snow Watch for this spell of colder weather is going to be coming up with you around 7 o'clock tonight. But starting us off is your week to 10 day video update. I want to begin with the stratosphere, and this is depicting the strength of the zonal winds at 10 HPA. This is from weatheriscool.com. So got lots of coloured lines here, and I haven't got time to explain what all of them are. If you watch your winter updates, we looked at this chart every week through the winter updates. And if you watch the winter updates, you know what all the coloured lines are representing, but I haven't got time to tell you about all of them right now. What you really need to know is that the black line here is kind of like the trend line for this time of year, and that's where we are right now in terms of the strength of the zonal winds. So we are well under average with the strength of the zonal winds. We've got very weak zonal winds. In fact, we've got a reversal of the zonal winds from the southern stratospheric one. We've been in reverse with the zonal winds pretty much since the first week of January. We're still in a reversal of the zonal winds right now, and set to stay in a reversal of the zonal winds underneath this all-important zero line just here. Set to stay with a reversal of the zonal winds for the next few days. But the GFS ensembles, which is depicted by these green lines, is lifting us into positive territory with the strength of the zonal winds in the next week or so. So it takes us a little while to lift us up above the level of the reversal, but we do get there eventually. Still a lot weaker than average. Man, this is the trend line, this black line just here, so still way weaker than average, but going back into proper sort of westerly zonal winds in the next couple of weeks. However, it's quite interesting. The ECMWF up to day 10 anyway is keeping the zonal winds pretty much in reverse. So this is from University of Berlin. It is from the ECMWF. So what you're just looking at was from the GFS. But this is from the ECM. The blue line here is depicting the zonal wind at 10 HPA, where we're just looking at. So that's where we are right now. We're kind of like on that zero line, but it is quite interesting that there's no sign of 10 HPA that the ECM wants to lift us back up into positivity going into this sort of level, as we saw with what the GFS is showing. Also at 30 HPA, which is a bit lower down, closer to the troposphere, indicated by this red line, that also looks like it's staying around or in reverse. So a little bit of disagreement between the GFS and the ECM there as to whether we keep the zonal winds reverse for the next 10 days, or whether after being in reverse for a couple of days coming up, we go back into westerly zonal winds at 10 HPA, albeit much weaker than you'd expect at this time of year. It's an interesting discrepancy between the two models. It doesn't make a great deal of difference really either way, because now we are looking to the troposphere, looking to the troposphere, the boundary level of the axial weather is taking place. That's where we're focusing on now, to see whether we get this bubble of high pressure from the southern stratospheric one, where we get the block setting up over Greenland. CT is looking like this. So we looked at this yesterday, and this is where we currently stand provisional today. We're at 5.7, an anomaly of 2.2 degrees above average, very mild. First half of January provisional up to the 16th. I think that's as high as it's going to get. I suspect this is going to do a little bit of a crash over the next week or two. So this is going to be quite entertaining, I think, to see how this drops day by day in the coming week or two. Where we're going to finish up, I'm not sure. Obviously, starting from over 2 degrees above average, we're not going to have a desperately cold January. So I suspect we will finish up somewhere between around, say, 3.0 and probably 3.9, something like that. But it's going to depend on how quickly this drops in the days ahead. But I think we could be in for some pretty big drops day by day to this, and as I say, it could be quite entertaining to watch this collapsing from that 5.7, 2.2 degrees above average. Could be quite entertaining to see that collapsing in the next week or two, so we'll keep a very close eye on that. These are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from the Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 85 thesis area in the active high pressure, low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure, blue to low pressure. Now look what the ECMWF is doing in the 7 to 10 day time frame. It's got this ridge of above average heights in the Northern Atlantic and extending it back into Greenland and also up to the North Pole. That is a genuine northern blocking feature now that the ECMWF is going for. And underneath it, of course, we've got this trough of below average heights, low pressure. It's across central and southern parts of Europe. So this obviously is going to be pulling, and it's also over Scandinavia and Eastern Europe as well. This is obviously going to be pulling down cold or potentially very cold air from the north and from the northeast too. And so this looks like it's locking into quite a prolonged spell of cold weather from that solution. All of a sudden, the models have latched on, or some of the models anyway, have latched on to the chance of a cold, potentially very cold spell of weather. And also, of course, with low pressure close to the country, potential for snow as well. The GFS is very similar. It's not getting that high pressure quite as far north in the 7 to 10 day time frame, but it is still to the northwest of the UK with the below average heights underneath it to our south. This is a little bit more easterly with the winds, so putting in cold easterly winds, at least initially, and then perhaps taking that high pressure a little bit further north, starting to turn the winds more into the north or from the northeast. But either way, both models are looking cold in the 7 to 10 day time frame. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. We now have some ensemble members that are going down into genuine big freeze type conditions. They're still a minority option. We're looking at London, by the way. Someone's asked me to have a look at the ensemble for London town. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for London town. We're starting off pretty cold at the moment. I'm going to stay cold generally over the next couple of weeks, really, but the ensembles are trending colder than average from beginning to end, albeit we do sometimes tick things up a little bit as areas of low pressure come in with slightly warmer sectors. Of course, those could be producing snow as they come into the colder air. But it's these ensemble members just here from around the 25th of January onwards that are going down into the freezer now. There aren't that many of them, but that's the kind of level I've been talking about this in the updates day by day. That's the kind of level we're looking for a big freeze. So what we've got coming up in the days ahead is cold. It is going to be cold in the next week or so. There will be wintry potential. Nothing overly severe. But as we get through to the end of January, we do have a minority option of potentially moving down into the freezer, and those are the ensemble members that are going down to between -10 and -15 at 850 HPA. Equally, we can't ignore these milder outlier members as well that we've got up here. So those are going milder as we go through to final days of January and into the start of February. So that's where the scatter is, really, from around this point onwards, which is kind of like 26th, 27th of January. There is a chance we could go into the freezer. There is the chance we could go a little bit milder. Overall, though, it looks like most of these ensemble members are keeping things pretty cold, even into the closing days of January. Precipitation-wise, ever increasing amounts of precipitation coming up, so lots of dry weather in the days ahead. That precipitation spike just there is for tomorrow, and we could see, well, sort of late tomorrow and Saturday we could see rain, sleet or snow across the country then. Over the rest of the weekend largely dry, but through next week more unsettled, and as it's still quite cold, there is the chance of bringing in some snow through the course of next week as well. More on that on Snow Watch tonight. Temperature anomalies are getting colder. This is from the 17th to the 25th of January. Below average temperature anomalies in the week ahead for the UK and Ireland. In fact, for much of Europe, we're coming out colder than average in the week ahead. Very different to what we've seen, particularly in the northwest of Europe so far this winter. That could be quite a shock to the system. Precipitation anomalies close to or a little bit drier than average in the week ahead from the 17th to the 25th of January. So cold, but reasonably dry in the week ahead, although there will be precipitation at times, and some of that could, of course, be wintry. Right, here's the all-important charts then, and we've got, first of all, the midnight run of the GFS. I want to show you what the midnight GFS operational run was doing. So, this is how we look on Saturday. We've got still the remnants of tomorrow, and this is how things are looking on Sunday, I should say, midnight on Sunday. We've still got the remnants of Friday and Saturday's weather system across the country, but pressure is rising from the southwest. Now, you might look at that, this is midnight on Monday, you might look at that and think we're going into a west-southwest in a mild flow, but look what happens. We get this low pressure digging in from the northwest, and it's stalling across the country. The reason that's happening is that the jet stream is going off down there. Now we've got cold air established across the country from the north and east, but we've also got cold air undercutting this system from the northwest, from around Greenland and Iceland. And so this is the potential for some snow Monday night into Tuesday from a weather system, weather front that's going to get stuck across the country with cold air coming in behind it, and the air is pretty chilly ahead of it as well. We've got to watch closely on what's going on with that area of low pressure. Now, as that low pressure slips away to the south, so the front stalls, an area of low pressure forms along that front, and then the low pressure itself pulls away to the south by midnight on Wednesday. That starts to open the door to easterly winds, and so that's how the midnight GFS run looks for Thursday. And we are bringing in a proper easterly wind there, particularly across England and Wales. If you follow the ice bars back, the air is originating from Russia and it's coming across Europe into the UK on those easterlies. So bitterly cold with those easterly winds, and probably bringing heavy snow showers to southern and eastern parts of the country. Then the high pressure sort of slinking down across the country by the end of next week, beginning to cut off that easterly to some degree, although probably still enough of an easterly in the south to produce some snow showers there, but otherwise we're under high pressure, so dry, cold and frosting. That's how we go up to day 10, still under this area of high pressure, so it's cold, it's mainly dry, it's frosty, but then just beyond day 10, look where that high pressure starts to go as we get towards month end. We're up to Monday the 28th of January. We're retrogressing that high pressure up towards Greenland. You know, it's a genuine area of high pressure over Greenland because we've got these green and yellow colours turning up. And that starts to force the wind into the north. That's bringing very cold air out of the Arctic. And then we go off and running into a really, really cold end to January with a proper northern blocking feature of 1050 millibar area of high pressure centred over Greenland, pulling down a bitterly cold north or northeasterly wind. Look at that. It's been a long time since we've had a situation like that in the middle of the winter. That's very, very cold air plunging down across the country. There'll be loads of snow coming in with that as well. Actually looks quite severe, I have to say. That's kind of like big freeze type conditions, and as we go through to the end of January and into the start of February, we remain very cold. Low pressure developing around the UK, but it's within really cold air because of this extreme blocking pattern that we have around Greenland The AO and the NAO would be through the floor with that. Both would be in extremely negative territory. Look where the jet stream is. The jet stream is way down to our south. I can actually show you the jet stream position. So the main jet stream, the main energy, is down here, coming out of North America, and then kind of like going down into the middle of the Atlantic and then into North Africa. There's a little bit of energy up there, but the main arm of the jet stream is way to our south there, forced so far south by this very extreme blocking that's setting up over Greenland. So the midnight GFS run produced a prolonged cold spell of weather, dare I say, a big freeze. This is how the 6 o'clock run of the GFS was looking. So this is the latest run as I'm doing the video at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And again, we've got this little ridge toppling in on Sunday. Still under the ridge on Monday, then the low pressure dies southwards into the country from the Atlantic Monday to Tuesday. Again, there is a stalling weather front with that. There's a weather front that's in this sort of position, and it's strung out across the country. There's probably an area of low pressure developing along that front as well. Cold air is established ahead of it, and cold air is undercutting from behind it as well. So it's a kind of thing that we look for to potentially bring a bit of a snow event. That low pressure then slides away to our south, takes the weather front with it, and then we turn the wind into the east through the second half of next week, albeit not as strong with that easterly as the midnight GFS run was showing, but nevertheless we're still turning the wind into the east, still bringing some pretty bitter air in from off the continent. Heading up towards day 10, we keep high pressure established around the country. That's how we look at day 10, still feeding in pretty cold air actually across England and Wales. A weather system's coming into the northwest of Scotland, trying to return us to milder Atlantic winds, but again that doesn't fare very well, that milder Atlantic push. It kind of like gets stuck across the country just a little bit beyond day 10 on Monday the 28th of January due to this area of high pressure that's sitting across Scandinavia. Again, there's weather fronts that are strung out here, so there's weather fronts doing that kind of thing across the country. And again, there could be another slow event with that. The low pressure then again sliding away to our south, and the winds turn back into the east. Again, prolonged cold weather, albeit from a different route. This isn't a Greenland blocking feature, this is more of a Scandinavian area of high pressure that's keeping us cold. But whichever way it happens, it does look as though both GFS operational runs so far today have been going for prolonged cold and potentially on the verge of big freeze type conditions. That's how the 6 o'clock GFS run finishes up on the 2nd of February, bringing in that bitterly cold easterly wind. And the upper air temperatures look like that, so very cold air has pushed across the country, certainly cold enough for daytime temperatures to be around freezing all day, hard, severe overnight frost, and if there's any precipitation running over North Sea, certainly all of that would be snow as well. So both GFS operational runs so far today looking very cold. This is for GEM, this is the Canadian model. Now this is a little bit different. We go through to the early part of next week and we bring this weather system in from off the Atlantic, so that's all in line. But it's from around Wednesday onwards, it goes a little bit different. It doesn't pull in that easy wind, and actually it brings us a relatively milder westerly flow through the second half of next week. Look at that. Instead of having winds in from the east, an area high pressure over Scandinavia, the GEM, Canadian model, keeps us in this milder west-southwesterly flow through the second half of next week. So it just goes to show there is still uncertainty within the model output. It's by no means a done deal that we are setting up a prolonged blocking and cold outbreak, but I think that is the way the models are sort of trending at the moment. And then the ECMWF looks like this. So again, early next week, we've got that little ridge toppling over country on Monday before the low pressure tucks in from off the Atlantic on Tuesday. It's a bit further west with that area of low pressure and its strung out weather front, so it's more in that sort of position. Probably bringing a greater threat of rain and snow to western parts of the country. Eastern areas, perhaps not quite so much. But that low pressure against diving southwards by the time you get through to Wednesday and into Thursday, similar to what the GFS is showing, we turn the winds into the east, start to bring bitterly cold air in from central parts of Europe with a blocking area of high pressure, this time centred more towards Iceland. There's that bitterly cold easterly wind coming in across the country, would be feeding in snow showers for many of us as well. Northeasterly winds as we go through to the end of next week. Bitterly cold northeasterlies at that. We keep things very cold. We saw it on the high anomaly flow charts. The ECMWF is very cold up to day 10. Well and truly blocked. Not quite getting that high pressure up towards Greenland at that point at day 10. Sunday the 27th of January. But it's a blocking feature, and there's no, I don't think there's any quick way out of that. Really, that will keep us cold through to the end of January, probably to the start of February as well. There's the upper air temperatures. We are close to a really intense cold pool that is actually sitting across parts of France and Germany. Upper air temperature going down to minus 15 at 850 HPA. Obviously, there is a chance that we might have some of that air into the UK. Let's see what the upper air temperatures are doing at 192 hours. So again, you see very cold air is sitting on the other side of the North Sea at 216 hours. We are engulfed into that cold air, actually. The temperature goes underneath minus 10 at 850 HPA. And then at 240 hours, that cold air kind of like sinks down into France. But just variations of the theme. It's certainly a very cold run today, the ECMWF, and you would expect really cold conditions up to day 10 with that, and certainly the chance of snow as well. This is how the ECM postage stamps are looking from the ensembles as we go out to day 10. So this is at 240 hours, 27th of January. We've got 16 ensemble members, including, as we've already seen, the control and the operational ECM run that has a blocking area of high pressure to the north, to the northwest of the British Isles, with low pressure to the south and to the southeast, kind of like pulling wind in from the northeasterly direction with that. So they're cold and they're blocked. We've got another 12 that have the high pressure. Let's change the colour. We've got another 12 that have the high pressure again, centred to the north, but just feeding it back into the middle of the Atlantic a little bit more. Still cold, really. We're still bringing in east or northeasterly winds with those ones. We've got a further 9 that have a real northern blocking feature there, sitting up to our north with the low pressure underneath it. The low pressure is down there. Again, these are very cold. They're bringing winds in from a northeasterly direction. These 8 are a little bit milder. These ones have the high pressure just there, kind of like to the west of Ireland, and so they're bringing in rather more of a westerly Atlantic flow, showing that what the GM is doing, it's an option, it's a minority option within the ECM ensemble suite, but it's not to be totally ruled out. And then there's another 6, and again, look a little bit milder. They've got the ridge through the Atlantic with the low pressure up here. They're a bit more unsettled as well, but still with a generally Atlantic flow. They are raising heights a bit up towards Greenland, but not as much. So sort of between those 8 and those 6, we see there is a minority option, definitely, for things to be relatively mild at day 10. But I think it's these ones up here, the 16 and the 12 and the 9 there, that we've got to focus on, because they're cold. If you put them all together and blend the range of outcomes of those ones, you would definitely be favouring cold, potentially very cold conditions at day 10. And then at 2 weeks away, 360 hours, which is the 2nd of February, the postage stamps look like that. High pressures around Greenland and Iceland, with those 22, including the control, because the operational run does not go beyond day 10. But those ones are cold still up to 2 weeks away. They've got high pressure around Greenland, low pressure to our south. They're still bringing in cold easterly winds. Then we've got another 12 that have the high pressure through the Atlantic with low pressure down here. Again, they're quite cold. They'll be bringing winds up from the north. There's 9 that have a ridge from the Atlantic through the UK going up towards Scandinavia. Not as cold as these 2, but nevertheless probably still having wind in from the east. And then we've got another 8 that have a really strong blocking feature by 2 weeks away. by the 2nd of February. Big area of high pressure from the Atlantic going up towards Greenland. Low pressure is over the top of the UK. Be very cold, but also very snowy. They'll be bringing in really cold air from the north, and of course the low pressure will be providing the chance of significant snow. So I think there has been a major increase within the ECM ensembles today to turn things much colder, for the next couple of weeks. Some of those ECM ensemble members will undoubtedly be going for big freeze type conditions. This is how the Beijing Climate Center is looking. These are the 500 millibar heights broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period takes us from the 16th to the 25th of January. We have above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic in the coming 10 days, with below average heights. Let's go over to the other side of the chart. Below average heights across northern, central and western Europe. That would be bringing the wind in from a northerly direction for the UK, so it's getting colder, it's getting more wintry in the next 10 days. Then we go through to the next 10-day period, which is the 26th of January to the 4th of February. We've got genuine northern blocking now. High pressure is up to the north of the UK, stretched out from Greenland to Scandinavia. Low pressure is underneath it to the south and southeast of the UK. We'd be bringing in a bitterly cold easterly wind, or northeasterly wind with those, so staying very cold for the end of January and the start of February with the Beijing Climate Center. This is how things are looking going from the 2nd to the 14th of February. Again, we have signs of intense blocking to our north. Low pressure is to the south. Again, we're probably bringing the wind in from an easterly direction. The only difference here is that we might be having slightly milder air coming into the south, but of course on the divide there would be the risk of significant snow. And then we go through to the next 10-day period. This is looking like a really prolonged cold spell of weather, I have to say, for a Beijing Climate Center. This is the 15th to the 24th of February, right towards the end of February, still with this intense northern blocking sitting to our north, still with low pressure to our south, but it's a little bit further south again, which means we could be pulling back even colder air from the east and from the northeast too. That's locked into very cold air from the end of January through towards the end of February. Temperature anomalies with the Beijing Climate Center in the next 10 days, from the 16th to 25th of January, are colder than average, below average temperature anomalies for the UK and for much of Europe. Quite substantially so, really. On the scale, we're going down sort of 1 to 2 degrees below average. The next 10-day period also looking quite cold for the UK, below average. The UK, most parts of Europe locked into freezer as well. Notice much milder than average for Greenland. That's where the high pressure is sitting. Very cold across eastern parts of America as well. So both sides of the Atlantic forecast to be really cold for the end of January, start of February from the Beijing Climate Center. Then the next 10-day period, from the 5th to the 14th of February, the cold just relaxes a little bit. So it's still a very blocked setup, but we possibly start to drag up some slightly milder, or slightly less cold air, let's say, from the south. But notice most of Europe is still really, really locked in to freezing cold conditions. What actually happens is go through to the next 10-day period, the final 10-day period, if you like, days 31 to 40, which is the 15th to the 24th of January. It begins to get colder again into the UK. That very cold air across much of Europe starts to back into the west yet again. So prolonged cold and wintry weather coming up over the next 40 days if the Beijing Climate Center is correct with this. Now, it's a big if, because all of these seasonal models are prone to chopping and changing, and you'll find out tomorrow what the JMA and CFS V2 are forecasting when we do JMA Friday. But certainly the Beijing Climate Center is there with a very, very prolonged spell of cold weather starting now and just carrying on through towards the end of February. That's all speculative, but coming back to the next week to 10 days, it looks like weather will be getting colder. We're going to start off not desperately cold, not severely cold, but certainly cold enough for wintry weather at times, and we'll be looking at that in Snow Watch later on this evening, focusing on the chance of some snow tomorrow, and then potentially early next week. And then the second half of next week, do we unleash those easterly winds? And then where do we go beyond that? Could we start to set up a big block around Greenland as the midnight run of the GFS did? Well, it's interesting to ponder all the possibilities. But for now, let's just focus on the next week to 10 days, which are looking at times wintry and generally quite cold. Right, that's all for now. I'll be back this evening with Snow Watch, so come back to that then. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.